This is Global Order. I'm Hindol Sengupta. My guest today joins me from the Middle East, which is currently facing one of its biggest turmoil ever. A war between Palestine and Israel is currently underway after Palestinian attackers flew, in a sense, over the border and attacked Israelis. My guest today is Jason Isaacson from the American Jewish Committee. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you, Hindol. It's good to be with you again.
I want to begin by asking you one of the questions that many people are asking. Where do you see this conflict go from here?
Well, it's difficult to say, of course. We're really now in day two of really the worst attack that's taken place in Israel, perhaps since its founding in 1948. We had, in the course of the day yesterday, some 250 Israelis killed in war crimes conducted by Hamas, a terrorist organization that's supported by Iran. The equivalent in India would be something like, given the population difference between Israel, population a little over 9 million, and India, something like 35,000 Indians killed in a single day. Imagine that. Imagine the trauma that has inflicted on Israeli society, to have children butchered and other children taken captive and brought down into Gaza by Hamas terrorists, grandmothers, families separated. We don't know how many people have been kidnapped. We don't know how difficult it will be to extract them from the clutches of this terrorist gang, which has a very sophisticated military potential, obviously, as we have seen. They penetrated a very well-protected border and moved into Israeli towns and villages in the southern part of the country, wreaking mayhem indiscriminately, attacking a music festival, just slaughtering people. Israel will react decisively. It can no longer tolerate. It has never been able to tolerate this kind of mayhem on its border. It cannot, there's no room for dialogue with Hamas. They're not interested in dialogue. They're interested in annihilating the Jewish state. That simple. I must tell you how repulsed I have been by some of the statements I've seen from some capitals around the world, saying that there shouldn't be any retaliation. We should de-escalate. People should calm down. There shouldn't be further violence. Easy enough to say, but when your country has this kind of butchery taking place on its territory, on its borders, within its borders, carried out by a gang that only wants to destroy the people and the country, this is not the time to say, oh, okay, we'll just forget that and move on. Of course not. That force has to be eliminated. Now, you just started this conversation by talking about conflict between Palestinians and Israelis. We have to be a lot more precise. This isn't a conflict between Palestinians and Israelis who share a land, will always share a land, and have found ways to work together and must continue to find much better ways to work together. We all recognize the difficulties. This is a conflict between a terrorist organization that's backed by Iran and the people of Israel. Let's narrow it to Hamas. There are thousands of fighters. They only want to destroy the state of Israel, and they are taking orders and taking support and weapons from Iran. And they're firing thousands of rockets into Israeli cities and towns. So I believe that with an effective military operation, which will be difficult, it will be costly, but it is unavoidable, Israel can solve this problem. The support that Israel has received from many nations around the world, I say most particularly the statement yesterday from Prime Minister Modi, has been so well received and so appropriate at this time of solidarity with a country that is under brutal attack by a terrorist organization on its border. We have to hope that Israel can operate in this manner as quickly as possible, as using the same restraint that it has used in the past and caution to avoid, to the extent possible, civilian casualties. but this is a force that has to be eliminated, and it has to be done decisively and permanently. Israel cannot continue to live with a gang on its border that is going to invade its towns and cities and capture civilians and drag them back across the border. They don't want peace. They don't want accommodation. They will not settle for living side by side with Israel in peace. They want to destroy Israelis, Jews. They want to destroy the state of Israel. That's not tolerable. And I was so pleased yesterday to see the reaction by the Prime Minister of India and others. The President of the United States spoke yesterday. The Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense of the United States offered to give Israel all the support that it needs in this difficult time. I'm hoping that in the course of the next day, this week, we will see ever more statements by world leaders supporting the people of Israel's right to live in peace in that region, side by side, work toward the resolution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But it's going to require the elimination of a terrorist force that sows destruction and only wants the elimination, the annihilation of Jews and of Israel.
Glad you mentioned Hamas and its background, because that leads me to my next question. A lot of people, especially younger audiences, don't know and don't remember that in 2005, Israel had unilaterally cleared off from the entire Gaza Strip. It had cleared off all settlements, some of them forcefully, I might add, including the Israel Defense Forces actually even cleared off graves and moved graves so that the entire area was cleared. Only weeks after that, Hamas started to rain rockets into Israeli territory and build that infamous network, that warren of tunnels burrowing under the land, going into Israel for terror attacks. A lot of people don't know this history at all, don't remember this history at all, especially younger audiences. They don't know that that was an opportunity where the Palestinian Authority and indeed Hamas could have, targeted their efforts at building infrastructure, schools, better living conditions for their citizens. And instead, they continued to rain terror on Israel.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, the history is very clear. The intentions of Hamas are very clear. The intentions of Iran, whose parliament, I believe, yesterday overwhelmingly endorsed the action of Hamas to brutalize, to try to destroy Israel, and called for once again, the Iranian regime called for the destruction of Israel. And there's been talk lately about perhaps inviting Taliban to come and join the Hamas fighters in fighting Israel. This is a war between a people who want to live in their native land in peace and contribute to the region. The efforts that Israel has made, as you have seen, through the Abraham Accords, but even before the Abraham Accords, to reach out to its neighbors, to work to improve agricultural production and the availability of water resources. Tremendous amount of water that goes from Israel to Jordan. The cooperation with Israel, with Egypt on the use of gas. The prospects of a new era starting from the Abraham Accords, in which Israel and the states of the Gulf and India can work together on food security, on other projects. All of that is on one side of the equation. On the other side of the equation is Iran's effort to destroy Israel and the efforts of thousands of Hamas fighters who do not want to live in peace, do not want to divide the land with the people of Israel. They want to just destroy that state. And those who recognize those stark divisions and could identify with those who want to live in peace rather than identify with those who want to destroy, following their extremist ideology, we have to find ways to make those arguments as clear as possible, and also how personal this is, how intimate this is. These are war crimes committed on a massive scale. And if you've seen some of the videos, which I don't recommend, but they are brutal and they are stark, and they show the depravity of the Hamas fighters who are, again, just committed to sowing death and destruction.
So very quickly, why in 2005 Hamas would not take such an opportunity where Israel was unilaterally backing off from the Gaza Strip and instead continue the war?
again, it was not a matter of wanting a two-state solution in which the Jewish people who trace our origins back to that land and have lived in that land for millennia could share the land with the Palestinian Arabs who have also lived in that land for many generations, for hundreds, thousands of years. As the UN had set forth in a plan that was accepted by Israel, although it was a major compromise for the Jewish people to divide the land between the Jews and Arabs in that land. It was rejected by the Arab states and it was rejected by the Palestinians. And then we had a war. And there are people who continue to believe that Jews have no right to live in their native land. And this is all Arab land, and Jews are foreigners. Jews are foreigners and they're locals. I mean, I live in the United States. I'm a foreigner, but I trace my ancestral history long ago to that land, and there have been Jews who've been living there continuously for many centuries, for millennia. But Hamas doesn't accept that. Certainly Iran doesn't accept that. But that's the reality, and I think that once people recognize the reality, the compromises that Israel has made, the compromises that it has offered to divide the land, including, as you mentioned, in Gaza, bringing some 9,000 Israelis out of Gaza so that it could be turned back over to the Palestinian Arabs who live there, and then to find that even the greenhouses that were built by Israelis and left for the Palestinians were then destroyed in this really nihilistic kind of movement to blot out the Jewish presence that had actually improved the land and the opportunities that would have been created by that infrastructure. This is not about dividing the land. It's not about a political settlement. It's about destroying the other because it doesn't have a right to be there. And that's not acceptable. And the more people read the history, recognize the brutality of and the extremism of the other side, I hope that they will come to support, stand in solidarity with Israel as it wages this unfortunate but necessary battle for its survival.
We don't have much time left, but I have two last questions for you, Jason. One is, a lot of people have been surprised that, the Israeli military apparatus, which is one of the best in the world, seems to have been caught unawares about this attack. How did that happen? And what happened to the famous Iron Dome, which can prevent, literally hundreds of rockets from landing on Israel? That's the one question. And the other, my final question is, some people also say that, look, things were beginning to get peaceful until the most recent government in Israel, the ultra-nationalists within it, provoked, instances, including on Temple Mount, that has complicated the situation. How do you respond to that? So two last questions.
Well, on the last question, I don't believe that what Hamas is doing is a response to the coalition government of Israel. This is a long-held campaign, long-conducted campaign by Hamas to destroy Jews, to destroy Israel. It's in their charter. It's in their ideology. And I don't think it really fluctuates depending on the composition of the Israeli government. They don't accept the Israeli government. They don't accept Israel. They don't accept Jews being in that land. As far as the what people have been talking about over the last 24 hours of intelligence failures or security failures of one of the world's most accomplished intelligence operations and military systems, there are many questions that have been raised without doubt. You're right. This is not the time, though, to conduct those investigations. Those investigations will take place. Everyone knows that. The most competent militaries will have flaws, will have faults, will have mistakes, will have errors, and we will learn that in time. But now is the time to stand with Israel as it defends its people against this brutality, against the war crimes that are being committed by Hamas. There are still, as of a number of hours ago, there were still Hamas operatives in some parts of southern Israel, holding Israelis hostage and engaged in firefights. And until they are neutralized, until the Israelis who have been seized and dragged into Gaza are returned, are rescued, until this terrible, brutal invasion ceases and those who have instigated it suffer the consequences that every nation, any nation, would impose on such acts. Until that time, there will not be a peaceful end to this terrible episode. We hope that will come quickly. We hope it will come with a minimal loss of life of those who are innocent of the crimes that are being committed by Hamas. Hamas will use the Palestinian public as human shields, as it has done in the past. And I fear that we will come a time in the coming days when, as Israel responds decisively as it must, we will see news stories about the disproportionate casualties on the Palestinian-Israeli side, and those make me so angry, and I hope make others of conscience angry. That when you have to fight against a brutal enemy in this sort of asymmetrical war, retaliating and seeking justice and putting an end to these kinds of invasions comes with such a heavy price in the media. So I'm hoping that those who read these stories will recognize Israel had no choice but to take the actions that it takes, as India, as any other country would, if attacked in this manner, as the United States did when it was attacked in 9/11. This really is Israel's 9/11, only given the size of the population, it's several-fold what was inflicted on the American people in 9/11. So let's stand with Israel. Let's hope that we can get through this as quickly as possible and return to a path of peace. Israel wants to live in peace with its neighbors, as it has proven again and again, as we saw in the Abraham Accords. Israel has been a productive contributor to peace and prosperity in the region. It wants to continue on that path, but it's not possible at this moment with this threat on its border. That threat must be eliminated.
Jason, thanks very much for your time. As the Indian Prime Minister has indeed said, India does stand with Israel in this moment of grave crisis. We in India, of course, understand such attacks from terrorists only too well, having faced them for many, many years. And like I said, as the Prime Minister has said, India stands with Israel at this grave moment of crisis, hoping it defeats the terrorists who have attacked it, and hoping that the Israelis and the Palestinians go back to a path to peace. Thanks very much, Jason, for your time.
Thank you, Hindol. It's good being with you again.